Well, for more on the midterms, let's bring in ABC News political director Rick Klein, shall we? Rick?
Let's.
Yes, let's continue this discussion about Georgia. And last night, as you were just hearing our conversation there, you know, Kemp and Abrams held their only debate just a few days after the Republican Senate candidate Herschel Walker took on incumbent Raphael Warnock. So what's your read on Georgia right now?
Yeah, and I want to dive in a little bit to Georgia because it is such a closely divided state. Raphael Warnock, you see our map from 2020, the runoff there. He won by about 90,000 votes. But guess what? Brian Kemp won by about 50,000 votes. A Republican governor and a Democratic senator on the ballot the same night. Now, there you go. There's a lot of people that are watching these races and saying you could see a repeat just during the same election. There's a real possibility that Brian Kemp is able to eke out another victory against Stacey Abrams, but that Raphael Warnock is somehow able to keep Georgia blue, at least that one Senate seat in that race against Walker. We've heard those varying explanations for episodes in his past that have been a drag on him. There's also a possibility that we get a real repeat of history, which is another runoff. If no one gets 50%, and you see Raphael Warnock was barely above that total after the second round of voting, then you have a runoff. And this could all wait until December 6th to get decided.
And Rick, in these closing days, closing weeks at this point, you do see Democrats focusing on social issues. The president, as we were talking about, out there on abortion. He basically forgave or granted clemency to those convicted of simple possession of marijuana. He's canceled student debt. These softer issues, you might say. Voters focused on inflation and the economy, and Republicans on crime, which voters also say, including a majority of Democrats, is a big issue. How does that play out?
Yeah, look, it's interesting if you look at the places that have the most competitive Senate races this year, almost everywhere where you've got a big race, you're starting to see a closing message around crime. We're seeing it play big, not just in Georgia, but also Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, North Carolina. It's been a big issue down in Florida. And the thinking is, that talking to some Republicans about this, they feel like the inflation voters are already probably going to vote Republican if that's your #1 issue. They think, though, they can bring kind of a second barrel into this, concerns around crime, concerns around security, and blame Democrats for that. Now, Democrats are fighting back with some messaging, including some messaging around January 6th and the insurrection last year, but they are on the defensive in a number of places, and we've seen some real tightening in the polls.
So let's talk about the big debates in some unusually close races in Ohio, Utah. Here's just one exchange between independent candidate Evan McMullin and also Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah.
It's time to start standing up to the broken politics of party bosses in Washington. I'm not going to Washington if we prevail to be a bootlicker for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And that's a commitment I've made to putting Utah first.
Okay, little switch up in words. We saw something similar in Ohio where Tim Ryan called out J.D. Vance for being a quote-unquote ass kisser. He was a little more direct there for Trump. So what do you make of this strategy, you know, just bashing candidates for being too close to Donald Trump?
It's interesting because Utah and Ohio were two pretty strong Trump states last time around. But the calculation among Democrats is that they may be able to tap into some independent voters who have Trump fatigue, even some Republicans that are sick of that and want someone who will show more of an independent streak. And what's interesting about some of these races, we've got our battleground zone here. Right now, 538 gives Democrats about a 3 and 5, a 6 and 10 chance of holding on to the Senate. But an upset race could really change that equation. Take a look at how the numbers change if Ohio, which has been a Republican state recently, but does have one Democratic senator, goes back blue. All of a sudden, Democrats go from that 60% chance to a 90% chance. So the idea of an upset is very tempting to Democrats. And Tim Ryan and Evan McMullin both, you've got people who are pretty well funded and have decent constituencies, decent name recognition that might be able to give the Republicans a run for their money in places that they thought they had in the bank.
But I wonder, nationally, it does feel like the tide is turning a little bit, like this election is coalescing around voting Republican in big numbers. And if the Democrats flip one state and not the others, it would seem to me to be a little unusual. And I want to talk about another state, Florida. There, the incumbent Senator Marco Rubio, he's taken on Val Demings in their only debate tonight. She was thought to be a very strong candidate. What are you watching for there? And do you think that all these races are essentially almost nationalized at this point?
Look, that definitely happens. And when you've got someone who's as well known as Marco Rubio, having run for president, and first as a Trump critic, but has now got much closer to his side, that is an in potentially for Val Demings. But again, Trump won Florida. And we could be seeing a bit of an inverse of what we just talked about in the state of Georgia, where you've got a Republican governor there in Ron DeSantis, who's likely to win. He's in a pretty good position to win. The question is, does Marco Rubio trail him in a significant way? Democrats are hoping to pull off an upset. Val Demings has good messaging, is well positioned to potentially be there, and has got a lot of money in the bank. I would look for that Trump factor to come into play, because even though Florida voted for Trump both times, there is a sense among some, even Republicans, that say enough with Trump. And to tie him more to it, I think is going to be one of the themes we're going to hear tonight.
Can't wait. Can't wait for the next 3 weeks. I know you'll be there throughout, Rick. Rick Klein, our political director, thanks very much.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.